Welcome back from that ad break, and I hope that you are ready to start looking at the main concepts of the lesson. So we are first going to look at the first microorganism, and that is bacteria. So we need to remember that bacteria is the plural form of bacterium. Bacteria are living organisms. They consist of one cell and therefore are called unicellular. Here you have the prefix uni to remind you that it is one cell. They are bigger than a virus. Bacteria can have various shapes such as spheres, rods, and spirals as seen in the diagram alongside, and usually the spherical shaped bacteria are called cocci bacteria, rod-shaped bacteria are called bacilli bacteria, and spiral-shaped bacteria are called spirilla bacteria. They feed on dead matter and substances in living organisms, and they multiply quickly in warm and moist conditions and can double in number every half an hour. We know that we can have some bacteria that are useful and others that are harmful. You are most likely to find, or you will have useful bacteria found in the human intestines and help with the digestion of food. You will also have harmful bacteria, and these are the disease-causing bacteria, the bacteria that makes us sick. An example would be bacteria that causes tuberculosis, cholera, syphilis, and pneumonia. There we have an example of a bacteria on the lungs known as Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and this is a tuberculosis-causing bacteria. Next, we move on to viruses. So viruses are said to be acellular. If we look again, we have a prefix A, which means without. And this basically means that this is an organism that does not have a cellular structure. Viruses can only reproduce and grow inside the body of a host. So they are dependent on a host to replicate and to grow and reproduce, to multiply basically. Viruses are smaller than bacteria. They can infect all types of organisms such as plants, animals, and bacteria. And they cause diseases such as common colds, flu, measles, mumps, and HIV. Okay, moving on to our third type of microorganism, we will be looking at protists. Protists can either be unicellular or multicellular, and if we look at our prefixes again there in the words, they give us an idea that one can have one cell and some protists can have more than one cell. Many protists are microscopic. Most protists are microscopic. And we know what micro means. We know it means small. And they live in water and they can be found in damp areas such as ponds, rivers, streams, and oceans. There's an example of protists that are viewed under a microscope. These are the microscopic protists. You also have macroscopic members of protists, and these are algae and seaweeds that are found in the sea. And there we also have another prefix that guides us and gives us an idea of how you would see these protists, which are algae and seaweed. They are macroscopic, meaning that they are large. They are not small like the others. So you also have protists that are plant-like and those that are animal-like. Plant-like protists have chlorophyll. This is a pigment that is found in cells. If you remember learning about photosynthesis, you should know what chlorophyll is. Chlorophyll is a green pigment that is found in plants, in green plants to be specific, that absorbs radiant energy from the sun to provide energy for the process of photosynthesis. And by now you should know that photosynthesis is a process that plants use to make their own food. So you know that the plant like protists use chlorophyll to make their own food. How are the animal like protists making their food or nourishing themselves? The animal like protists catch and eat their own food. The last microorganism that we are looking at is fungi. Okay, so these are living organisms that can also either be unicellular or multicellular, just like the protist. They feed on dead plants and animals, and many are decomposers, and they release enzymes to break down dead matter. An example of fungi would include items like molds, like bread mold, mushrooms, and these are macroscopic and are large enough for us to see without a microscope. If you take a slice of bread, you'll be able to see green and white patches on the slice of bread. That is because you usually have a type of fungi, a mold that is growing on the bread, and you don't need to look at it under a microscope. You can actually use an item like a magnifying glass to view the mold and see like specific detail or special characteristics of the mold. This is bread mold, like I have said, that can be seen with the naked eye. And then you also have a fungi that is microscopic, and this can be seen under a microscope. For example, yeast. An example of a yeast that is microscopic would be, for example, if you have oral thrush. This is a type of yeast infection that occurs on your tongue or the inner lining of your mouth. And usually for scientists or doctors to see and confirm that you have oral thrush, they would usually take a sample of your saliva from the mouth and take it for testing at the lab. And there they will be able to see the microscopic fungi. So fungi, just like bacteria, can also be harmful and useful, like we learned when we were looking at bacteria. So here we are looking at how fungi can be harmful and what kind of fungi is harmful. So the harmful fungi may cause infections of the skin, such as ringworms and athlete's foot. Ringworms are found anywhere on the skin. There's an example of a ringworm on someone's head. You also have useful fungi, and this is something that is edible, something that you can eat, like mushrooms and the yeast that is used to make bread and cheese. That is the useful fungi that we have. Let us take an ad break, and we will be back with more to finish off our lesson.